All right, call the meeting to order at 3:02. Can I get roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Director Espinoza.
Present.
Director Hogue.
Here.
Director Smith. Director McDaniel.
Present.
Director Samra. Director Nagy.
Here.
Director Nelson.
There.
Director Pereira. Director Pedrozo.
Here.
Director Silvera.
Present.
Chair Yanez.
Present, and we have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
And Director Smith is here.
Present.
All right, let's move on to 1B. Do we have volunteers at invocation? Director McDaniel? I'm nominating you if you're up for it. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate this opportunity. If we could all bow our heads. Lord, please be with this body today. We have a lot of important decisions. We make them in your honor, and we continue to praise you in everything that we do. It's in your name. In the name of Lord Jesus Christ, we all say, Amen.
And while we're standing, I'll lead us in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right, move on to item 2, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion, Director Pedroza, a second by McDaniel. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Move on to item 3, public comment. I understand we do have interpreter services here in the back. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Public comments available during the meeting is limited to 3 minutes per person. Again, to be recognized, if you could just come up to the podium and silence or mute your cell phones if possible. Do we have any public comment? No? Do we have anyone online? No? Okay, we'll close public comment, move on to item 4. Reports, presentations, 4A, Caltrans. Do we have Caltrans online or in person?
Good afternoon. Oh, the other way? How about now? Can you hear me? Okay. I see. Okay. Okay, thank you. My name is Sylvia Dayak. I'm the investment planning manager for Caltrans District 10, attending today for Gregoria Ponce, who was not able to make it. I have a couple updates on the planning side, and if there are any comments or questions on project-related issues, I will be happy to take anything back to the district and get those answered. Caltrans recently released in July the Caltrans System Investment Strategy, also known as CSIS. With the CAPTI alignment metric document, we use both documents as our framework to prioritize projects, to nominate them for state and federal funding opportunities, and make them as competitive as possible. In addition to that, on the grant side of the house, the Federal Highway Administration issued a NOFO under the National Culvert Removal, Replacement, and Restoration Grant Program. The call for applications are currently out. Applications are due September 23rd of this year, and there's available funding in the amount of $196 million available. If there are any other grant or funding questions, always feel free to contact me, since I am the investment planning manager. And I also help with providing letters of support and partnership letters.
Thank you so much. Questions, comments from directors? No?
Oh, Sylvia's going to get,
Nope.
oh.
Director Nagy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple things. I'm from Gustine. We've got a couple projects going on. One of them is a sidewalk project that Caltrans is doing through town on Highway 33 and 140. Somebody didn't do their due diligence, and so a lot of the poles and fire hydrants and vaults and so forth were not marked out on the plans that were sent out to bid. And so they're having to go for change orders, and District 10 isn't handling it. They're sending it to District 2, I've been told, and it's taking forever. And in the meantime, we have about half of our sidewalks through town that are unusable because there's gaps in them. There's no handicap corners at any intersection yet. They've just got them torn out, but nothing put back in. So if you could see about maybe getting those change orders expedited, that'd be fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. I will follow up. We'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Last month I asked for an update on the Sutter and Highway 140, State Highway 140, and the community of Planada on the push button crossing, the hog system, push button hog system through there. Because I got an earful yesterday from the MAC community. So if I can get an update next month, because I know you guys, different people keep coming forward, but I don't get an update on it, please.
Yeah, I'll make sure we'll get an update next month.
Thank you so much.
Director McDaniel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have one. I'm trying to find the name of the road right now. I apologize. It was in front of McSwain School, 140, and I can't.
Is it Scott?
Scott Road. Yeah, I've been getting some emails regarding folks coming out of there. I know we've changed the whole direction. They're making it a one-way street during school drop-off, but I guess traffic is really getting backed up on their way out to 140. And I know we've had many discussions, and but if there's a way we can signal that, we do have CHP hanging out in the area, so folks, but what happens is people are trying to turn left on the 140, and then people are passing other people whenever they're stopped to allow them, and it's just really becoming congested, both in the morning and when they pick the kids up in the afternoon.
Okay, I'll pass it on.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Move on to 4B, Citizen Engagement Program update.
That's for me. I just wanted to use the opportunity to provide a quick update on how the conversation went with the Citizens Advisory Group after the board's action last month to dissolve the CAC and to go to a one agenda system. So we did, as you saw, that we issued one agenda this month. We will be working out the kinks, but the TRB meeting yesterday went really well, and we had some feedback that the staff will share as those items are presented to you. For the CAC, we went ahead and kept the same date for the meeting that would have happened in August. We had a handful of participants, but really, really great discussion. I think a lot of relief on their part to hear that the board was really committed to working with them to preserve their engagement and to become more efficient and look for opportunities to do things differently. So we're going to continue to meet at the regular time as the CAC would through the end of this year, really fleshing out some of the strategies and opportunities that we can begin to implement in the start of 2025. I will say that maybe the flip side of the coin that was discussed here about maybe being somewhat sensitive to the MCAG staff putting a lot of work into a new program only to maybe end up with the same handful of participants. Before we even had that kind of discussion, several of the former CAC members really started to talk about new ideas in the version of we would love to be ambassadors. We would love to be the ones to lead these types of discussions. And to me, that was really indicative of a partnership in how we can really continue to work closely with these folks that have really invested their time in MCAG and let them really help educate them to be an extension out into the community of the work that we do. So just really positive meeting. We'll continue to have those, and I'll give you periodic updates as things formalize.
All right, thank you. So move on to item 5, information items. These items are included in informational purposes. No presentation will be made unless board members have questions. Do I have any directors with questions on items 5A through 5C? Nope. All right. Move on to item 6, consent calendar. All consent calendar items will be listed, may be acted upon with one vote. Do I have a motion, item 6?
Chair Silvera, motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Silvera, second by Pedroso. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, move on to item 7, action items. Action items will be considered separately by the boards. Let's move on to item 7A, adopt via resolution 2024-815-05, the 2025 Federal Transportation Improvement Program, 2022 Regional Transportation Plan A Amendment 2, and corresponding air quality conformity. For this, we'll move on to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Chair. I think since you read them all out, I can use the acronyms now. This is the action item this month for our FTIP and related documents. They came here last month as a draft. We held a public hearing and we did not receive public comments, but we did receive written comments from Caltrans on our FTIP and our air quality document. They were fairly routine and they are included in the response to comments in both of the published documents. So I'm happy to take any questions on those and otherwise am recommending and hoping for your approval today.
All right, questions from directors? No?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, motion to approve. Do we have a second? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? No? All right, thank you. 7B, adopt policy update and release call for projects for the congestion mitigation and air quality program. This will go to Christopher.
We are requesting board approval for an updated policy and procedures document for CMAQ, as well as a new call for projects for available CMAQ funds. We have $8.5 million available in CMAQ funds. We are looking for more projects to use these funds. We didn't get many last time around. We have created a draft updated policy and procedures document to help guide our programming to help guide your programming decisions. We have proposed minor narrative updates as well as changes to the current scoring criteria. And we have simplified this scoring criteria to provide a clearer and simpler scoring guide for projects. We have removed criteria deemed redundant or overly specific, and we have also added safety as a separate category. With that, I can take any questions, and I am recommending your approval of this.
All right, thank you. Director McDaniel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Christopher, thank you for the update. So you'd mentioned that we haven't used these in the past, so we're starting to get some in the bank, 8.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So do we risk, if we don't use them, of losing them? Is there a deadline?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
You guys probably have seen this is Chris's first item, so. You did a great job, Christopher.
He's presented to us before and has done very well. So, oh, he has it? That was your first one? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The funds do kind of carry over, but they do have a 3-year deadline. There is incentive when you spend them down, you get more and you get advances
Right.
from the state. So we're just kind of like losing out. But they do carry over time, but we don't want to leave that
Okay.
much open on the book.
And Elizabeth, I don't know if we've done this before, but I think in the past we have been able to, when they get to a point of not being able to be spent, that we can exchange or loan them, or can we let other agencies use them and get them back in different colors of money or what have you?
We can, if we get to the point where we make the use it or lose it list, if they do get old, then we can loan them to another agency. My hope is that we get tons of applications, we fill up our 8.5 million, and then we borrow from other agencies. That's like my ultimate goal, but we're always tracking that so that we don't ever lose money, and we just want to make the best use of it.
And I just have to underscore, this is, though, one of the funding sources where if a program project does not keep its schedule, it does jeopardize the integrity of that program, meaning that those funds need to be spent. So we really encourage our jurisdictions to have realistic project delivery schedules and make their project milestones and all of that kind of stuff.
Thank you, Chair. That concludes my questions.
All right, any other questions?
I got one. No.
I just wanted to clarify that this can be used now again for street sweepers.
Yes, there was a, what was it?
They made a waiver for it. They made a
De
waiver.
minimis waiver for the Buy America.
Okay, do they have to be electric?
That's California rules, not.
Yeah, they have to be alternative fuel,
Okay,
so CNG or electric.
okay.
They still have to compete on paper, and CNG doesn't compete as well as electric. I'm sorry, I hope everyone can hear me. But, okay, so they can be alternative fuel, not diesel.
Okay, and alleyways can be paved if there's more than 25 vehicles per day using that alleyway? If I read that also correctly?
If you read that correctly, no, I don't remember what's in the policy, but yes, they're eligible up to a certain amount of the funding, not
Right,
full like 8 million, but
Perfect.
they're eligible, yes.
okay. Thank you.
I just want to confirm that is correct, that you can pave dirt alleyways with minimum vehicles per day of 25 for each applied for alleyway.
The
That's,
reason I ask is because we have a detour where we have the roundabout going in and everybody's driving the alley.
Now's the time to do the traffic
And so
count.
would that make it qualify?
if you have 25 cars
Do a survey.
Perfect.
a day. So I should say, this all comes down to, there is a scoring process. So some of these projects, even though they're eligible, may not score well. But it really, that's what these policies are for, is to help guide the investments most closely aligned to the program goals. So.
All right, any other questions? No? All right, thank you. Great job.
Thanks, Chris.
One down, a few 100,000 to go. All right, let's move on to 7C.
This is action.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, do I have a motion on this?
Silvera, second.
Motion by McDaniel, second by Silvera. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? No? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, move on to 7C, adopt the 2024 One Voice program goals and schedule. For this, we'll go to Mary Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your patience. I'm doing double duty today. The action item before you is to adopt the 2025, not 2024. Apologize for that. One Voice program goals and schedule. Yes, it feels like this 2024 program just ended, because it did. We are kicking off the 2025 program because, number one, we're not having a meeting next month, and also because of the election, we want to make sure that we kind of get going on this, because there's always a little bit of a lag when it comes to appointing delegates and getting priorities in the hopper before amongst all of those other things that are happening out in the world. So the item before you today outlines the goals of the program for 2025, which are pretty much entirely the same exact goals that the board adopted several years ago when you did an overhaul of the program. The one kind of slight nuance to that first goal on page 156, the top of your staff report there, is that we did note that when the jurisdictions are considering who they're going to appoint as their delegates, that they may want to consider including a senior member of staff along with any electeds. We have just noted, and the delegates have noted too, that that tends to be a better recipe for success, that when there's a combination of electeds and staff from each jurisdiction, you're able to be pretty impactful when you go to DC and advocate for your priorities. We're going to continue the focus on the handful of priorities between 2 to 4 that will act as themes of the policy platform for 2025, with the individual jurisdictional projects used as illustrations for why promoting those policies is important. And the schedule that is also outlined in your staff report starts a little earlier. We're going to kick this off with TRB members next month in September. We're going to check in with them on priorities and their internal processes, so make sure that they're communicating with you guys at your local boards to be discussing and prioritizing what your needs are, so we can get those to us by that October 1st deadline. We ask that delegates be appointed by the beginning of December, because we are integrating the orientation for new One Voice delegates this year in the middle of December. We discussed that at the debrief just a couple months ago. And then starting at the beginning of the calendar year 2025, we'll meet as a delegation. We'll put together that proposed platform and come to this board in March, as usual, to adopt that before we start meeting as a larger group, again, to prepare for the trip to DC, which will take place May 13th through 16th, 2025. The schedule is also a little bit different this year because of our San Joaquin Valley Policy Conference, which we are scheduled to hold in April, which you discussed here last month. The staff will be very busy putting that on, so we are going to kind of pause for a few weeks in One Voice planning for the first part of April to make sure that we can put our full effort into policy conference planning and rollout. The framework for the program will essentially be the same, no big changes there, and I think that is all that I wanted to kind of highlight. The delegate agreement is on page 159, so for those of you that are extra anxious to sign up, you know, I'll take your delegate agreements today if you want to give them to me, but I'll let you decide back home who's going to do that. So happy to answer any questions if there are any.
What questions from directors? No? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Chair, Silvera, motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Silvera, second by McDaniel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. All right, move on to 7D. Approve Regional Early Action Planning Grant Program 2.0 Sub-Allocation Awards. For this we go to Meg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon. You'll likely recall that MCAG developed 2 new grant programs with our state REAP 2.0 funding, the Local Sub-Allocation Grant Program, and then the Regional Competitive Grant Program. We have already received and evaluated applications and intended on awarding the grants back in February, but we're on pause due to potential state budget cuts. The governor's budget back in January proposed a 50% cut, but it's good news that the final budget only included a 5.9% cut for REAP 2.0. So that funding cut reduced MCAG's eligible amount by about $213,000, which brings our full eligible amount down to $3.68 million. So this funding cut needs to be applied to either one grant program or both. So that's part of the action that we're requesting from you today. This is a 2 action item. So the first would be to direct staff how to cut that 5.9% funding between the 2 grant programs. And then the second is to authorize MCAG to execute grant agreements with the local jurisdictions for the awards. But that's pending approval from HCD on the revised budget. And that's the California Department of Housing and Community Development. But first, I'm going to just provide a little bit of background. The staff report lists the applications that were received for the 2 grant programs. The local sub-allocation grant program, the funding pot's about $900,000 and provides formula funding to local jurisdictions to implement 6 cycle housing elements. Most jurisdictions just applied for funding for their housing element rezones, which are currently underway. So that funding is much needed. And these local sub-allocation grant applications were just evaluated on a pass-fail basis based on the criteria and the grant guidelines. And I do want to note that Table 1 lists the applications that were received. There is kind of a placeholder for the county. We're still coordinating with the county on receiving their application, but their full eligible amount is listed in that table as well. And then for the Regional Competitive Grant Program, this was about 75% of our total funding at about $2.7 million, and this was really intended for implementation projects. We received 4 applications, all from the city of Merced. We had a scoring committee with representatives from the state and Atwater and Livingston and the county to evaluate the applications, and these scores are listed in the staff report. The I Street project in partnership with Link Housing was the highest scoring application, so that's the one being recommended for award. And then regarding the 5.9% cut, will need to be applied to one or both programs. Table 3 in the staff report shows a couple different options for the cut. During yesterday's technical review board meeting, there was consensus from the group that option 2 is preferable. That's just cutting the 5.9 or about $213,000 from the larger Regional Competitive Grant Program. the city of Merced, who submitted the application, said that that funding cut wouldn't necessarily be a deal breaker for that project. And then that way the funding for the local sub-allocation grant program for the housing element rezones will stay intact. That funding is much needed. So that's my report. And just to summarize, the two actions are, the first is regarding the funding cut. So the recommendation from TRB was that option 2 is preferable, which cuts the 5.9% from the regional competitive grant program and leaves the local sub-allocation grant program budget intact. And then the second action is to authorize MCAG to execute grant agreements for the local sub-allocation grant program and regional competitive grant program pending approval from HCD on the revised budget. And with that, I can answer any questions.
All right, so before we go to directors, do we have any public comment or questions?
Good afternoon, Chair People. I'm Leah Brown with the City of Merced, a management analyst and project champion for the LINK competitive grant that was submitted before you. LINK project is actually going to be, we're in the process of selling them 5 parcels downtown that are all right next to each other that span a city block. And they're going to be building a 3 and 4 story affordable housing complex, 54 units of affordable housing. And we are really happy that MCAG thought to award them that project. So we thank you.
Good afternoon. Scott McBride, City Manager for the City of Merced. I just want to acknowledge the hard work done by staff to get to where we are today. The Link Housing Project is very exciting to us. It's one of I think 3 or 4 we're still working through. The funding really at this stage is an easy shift. I think we all agreed yesterday during the TRB it was more important to have funding for your local jurisdictions to do what's necessary into the housing elements. That's a really important piece to have going forward to leverage benefits for your community, and we can definitely work on other funding sources for the local project. So I was the chair. I said, please, that's what I think makes the most sense for us, and so we hope you will consider that option today as part of your action. And so again, I just want to thank the staff, yourself for the consideration today. I think this is a win-win for all of us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment or questions? No, seeing none.
Paul?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where did you say that was going to be? I'm sorry.
I Street.
18.
I Street, yeah, I Street.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Director Silvera.
Mr. Chair, if there are no further comments from my colleagues, motion to approve with the 5.9% reduction coming out of the regional competitive grant program. And then the other thing is to authorize MCAG to execute the grant agreements.
Thank you. And we have a second? All right. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Director Nagy.
Just a clarification that in the agenda on page 20, it says the governor's office changed the name of the planning and research to the Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, but on page 160, it still calls it the Office of Planning and Research. So we need to amend the agenda to the right name.
Right title.
Renamed it.
Page 20 and page 160.
160 at the very bottom.
All right. Any other comments, questions? We have a second.
Maker of the motion is perfectly fine with those changes.
All right. And the second as well. Okay. All right. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposition?
Mr. Chair, can I
Yes.
get, who was the second?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else on this second part of this item? No, that's it. We're good. Okay. Move on to item 8, discussion items. 8A, draft multi-jurisdictional local road safety plan.
All right, so this is also me. MCAG contracted with Fair and Peers to develop a multi-jurisdictional local road safety plan for the 6 cities in Merced County. The county was developing their own plan, which is why this project just included the 6 cities. The local road safety plans are prerequisite for certain funding, and the draft is now live, available for a 30-day public review. And just to give a brief overview of what's in the plan, we have Terrence Sau from Fair and Peers, and he's just going to give a short presentation.
Good afternoon, directors. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to share my screen for the presentation. Please, someone speak up once they can see it on my screen. I'm seeing from the video that it's showing up, so I'm going to launch into it. Once again, thank you for your time this afternoon. I'm just going to give everyone a quick overview of the multi-jurisdictional local roadway safety plan, the background behind it, what's in it, and the next steps. So first things first, I wanted to talk a little bit about the safe system approach. This is the new state of the practice framework that the federal government and Caltrans has adopted with respect to roadway safety. You can think of it as a new way to really view how to solve the problem of roadway safety, and aligning MCAG to this state of the practice approach helps it with competitiveness with respect to competitive grant funding at the federal and state levels, where having this LRSP is also often a requirement. So on the right, you see a map. This is showing places in Merced County that are within the sort of disadvantaged range when it comes to the Healthy Places Index score, and this is one of the many metrics used at the state and federal level to determine what communities are disadvantaged. And for most such metrics, Merced County kind of looks like this, where almost all of the county is colored in and identified as disadvantaged, and that usually boosts your chances when it comes to grant funding. So it's just something to keep in mind, why it's important to align with sort of the latest federal and state practices, because there's a lot of money on the line. What the safe system approach really is it takes the traditional approach to roadway safety, which is focused on reacting to when there's a crash happening, figuring out what happened, to being something more proactive to actually prevent death and serious injuries before they happen, and to examine the transportation system systemically, as opposed to just going to the site of the last crash to do a post-mortem. So really, ultimately, the goal is to be more preventive in the approach. And in order to do that, one of the things that is part of this LRSP and is sort of required as a best practice is adopting this vision, this goal to eliminate severe injuries and deaths on our roadway by 2050, which seems like a big ask, but important to keep in mind that this is also the goal Caltrans has adopted for itself. This happened in early 2022, so been a few years now. And the safe system approach is also adopted at the federal level. So, this MCAG will not be alone in being good company in adopting this goal, and it will bring it in line with current federal and state policies. So a little bit more about this LRSP. It is a multi-jurisdictional effort. It involves each of the 6 incorporated cities within Merced County, and MCAG is coordinating this effort. And so at the end of the day, it's expected that MCAG will adopt the full plan. The local jurisdictions are expected to adopt their portion of the plan also, and that just helps the local jurisdictions have an easier time in getting state and federal assistance. Also, the expectations are that the standing working group that was convened for the development of this LRSP will continue to meet after the plan is adopted to perform ongoing monitoring to see how the plan's doing. And it's also expected that MCAG, as well as local jurisdictions, especially institutionalize practices for the safe system approach in their policies, in their policy standards as needed to align themselves with best practices. And the plan outlines what needs to be done to get there. And so a little bit about the structure of the LRSP. It's divided into 2 volumes. The first volume is really the big picture. It has the introduction. It has the vision that we discussed, the policy background, sort of the strategy for the region. Volume 2 is divided into 6 sections, one for each of the incorporated jurisdictions that it covers. And so each jurisdiction has their own section that includes their collision data, their collision profiles, and their conceptual projects, all of which we'll talk a little bit more about. And it's intended so that each jurisdiction could just pull their section out and use that.
Can we pause right there just for a second? I have a question.
Yeah, this is Lloyd Pereira. Does the county not need to participate in this?
Yes, the county does need to participate, but the county is doing their own LRSP, and that effort actually started well before this plan came under development. So that's why the county is not included in this.
All right, thanks.
Of course. So with that, I wanted to just briefly in this presentation kind of give an overview, an example of how we go from analyzing the collision data to then getting collision profiles to then getting conceptual projects that demonstrate the principles of the plan. And so what we did was we started with collision data between the years of 2015 to 2022. Every collision that resulted in some form of injury within that time frame was analyzed, and we shaped our analysis in a way to really get at the root causes, the profiles that are influencing these collisions. What are the most common risk factors that are leading to collisions within the study area? And so these are the 7 we got, and they each correspond to one or several of the jurisdictions. So it's DUIs, driving under dark conditions where lighting may be insufficient, side street stop control intersections, speeding on excessively wide or excessive roadways or excessively wide lanes, driveway clusters, especially near intersections, intersections that either have more than 4 legs or have non-standard intersection geometry that may impact visibility, and finally, permissive left turns. And so this is how each of those profiles apply to the different cities. You can see some cities have more than others. And so I want to zoom in on profiles C and D for the city of Dos Palos to show how we get from this understanding of those risk factors to a specific instance where and show how those risk factors can be mitigated under the safe system approach. So we start with collision records, but to be systemic and proactive, crash records is not the only thing we look at. It's also matching other locations that are similar as the locations that have a high crash history, to say these locations are functionally pretty similar. So if one location has crashes and the other doesn't, it may just be we can prevent the same kinds of crashes at the location that has fewer. But looking at this map, you can see there's a big cluster here towards the southern end of town along Highway 33, and that's the intersection with Stearman, and we'll show that in just a little bit. But just before that, a quick caveat, which is that we develop these conceptual projects to really demonstrate the principles of the safe system approach and principles of the plan and how they can be applied. There is no obligation for any jurisdiction to actually implement these projects. There are suggestions. We did cost them and identify the benefits and the BCRs, and we include that in an appendix to the plan. But again, there's no obligation for local jurisdictions to put shovels in the ground to do these. And even if they do, it doesn't have to be as specified in the plan. But with that said, this is the intersection. It's Highway 33 and Stearman Street. It's got a side street stop control. You can see it's really built so that you can only turn right onto the highway, but this is routinely not followed. So you can see pictured was just one of the many pictures that we took during our walk audit to the site, where in this case, it was a big rig that was trying to turn left at this location. And so that presents a hazard. And really the solution here could be a roundabout. It can serve those turning movements that people are making anyway. But what's also great is that it could slow down all traffic as they head into the city of Dos Palos. This is right at the edge of the city, and so as folks are heading in, having a roundabout could just give people a chance to really slow down before they enter the city. I should note that there's a lot of engagement that went into this plan. These projects did not come from thin air. We held in-person engagements at multiple community events, including both of the fairs that happened in May and June. We also visited a few local festivals and markets. We also had online engagement up at the same time all throughout the course of the project, and we gathered over 300 responses in the online survey and web map that we produced. We also engaged with jurisdictions, so we held walk audits with each of the staff from each of the 6 jurisdictions to visit high collision sites and to identify potential conceptual projects. And we also provided jurisdictions with a review period for this draft LRSP that occurred before this week. And so now, as Meg mentioned, we have posted the draft on the project website. You can access that by either using the link or by scanning this QR code. And this the draft will be up for a month, ending in September 15th, and at which point the final document will go before you again in October for adoption. And that was it. I turn it back over to you if you have any additional questions for me.
Thank you, Terrence. I don't have anything else to add, but just wanted to thank Terrence for the presentation and then encourage you all to take a look at the plan and let us know if you have any comments. And then this is just a discussion item.
All right, thank you. Any public comment? No? Directors? Silver?
So, as you go through and these intersections are there and you come up with, you said that you don't have to do anything with them, but seeing how these become public documents, do we ever fear that there's any liability that's put on us, that you've identified bad areas, you've come up with potential solutions for these areas, you say that you don't have to do anything to them, but if it's a bad area and something ends up happening there, does it open us up to any kind of liability? Because we've all recognized that this is an area and this is the potential fix for that. So I don't know if that's a question for you, Meg, or if that's a question for council, or.
Yes, I believe there could be, actually our esteemed director, Mr. Smith here, might have a better answer for this given his particular area of practice, but I believe there is some immunity for us as a public agency, given that this is a required document that we produce. I would certainly hope that is something that is addressed, but I don't have an answer to that question right now. I would have to look into it further.
In the first instance, we would all have sovereign immunity. But if we behave recklessly in the face of additional facts, that might be a separate issue requiring some research.
That's just the thought that popped in my head.
Such a lawyer. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know, Terrence, can you hear my voice? This is Shane Smith from the City of Merced.
He said he can hear you.
Okay. He's no longer on screen. So I'm just talking to myself.
No, not to me. Yeah, just,
Hello? Hello?
Terrence, can you hear us?
Can folks hear me?
We can hear you. You're back in the MCAG meeting.
Perfect. Yeah, I think I was demoted from panelist, and so I couldn't speak for a second. But just to recap, your question was legal liabilities potentially arising from the inclusion of certain locations.
Yeah, I have a separate question, but go ahead and respond to Director Silvera on that point, please.
Yeah. So on that point, we have been very careful to not implicate MCAG or any local jurisdictions by calling out any particular location as quote unquote unsafe. Instead, we just say that these are the collision numbers that we found at each location or did not find in each location, and that there can be risk factors present at this location, but there can be risk factors present at any location. And we also do frame these conceptual projects as just that, concepts, examples. They are not sort of in a list of projects that that folks are obliged to do. It's not like an optional list of projects that local jurisdictions are obligated to do. They're just for illustrative purposes. And indeed, if local jurisdictions do want to do these projects, there will need to be additional design engineering that actually go into having a shovel-ready project.
You got the thumbs up from Director Silvera, so I think that's good. Thank you.
Excellent. I can't actually see you while I'm talking, so you'll have to bear with me.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll get each other through it. Different question. Again, this is Shane Smith from the City of Merced. I had a question about the long-range scope of the project. I heard you say earlier in your presentation that the goal is, and correct me if I'm wrong, 0 traffic injuries and deaths by the year of 2050. Is that right?
It's 0 deaths and severe injuries. So, bruises, cuts wouldn't fall into that category. Loss of limb, loss of consciousness, stuff of that nature would fall into the severe injury category. So it certainly isn't, the safe system approach isn't meant to eliminate all injury. I think it's really looking at the fatalities and the really severe life-changing injuries.
Okay, and the idea now is to look for unreasonably dangerous intersections or other roadways that can be remodeled. Is that the idea?
I think the idea is not necessarily to say dangerous, but I think the idea really is to get at the root causes of what makes particular crashes more severe than others. And it's a lot of it has to do with the speed and the angle at which crashes happen is pretty determinative of how severe they are when it comes to car-to-car crashes. And then obviously when you have vehicle versus pedestrian, or for example a big rig versus a vehicle, there's the sort of added inequality of the respective sizes and weights in mind. Really the idea is to reduce conflicts, reduce speeds when there's inevitable conflicts, and to generally revisit the entire roadway network to identify places where there's, like you said, unnecessarily high levels of risk as present in those sort of features.
And the 0 serious injuries by 2050, that's set by a superior government, right? The state or the federal government?
Yes, that's by Caltrans.
Caltrans, okay. But then in your analysis, you had DUIs as risk factor A. Is that did it just happen to be A, or is that the most common risk factor that your analysis found?
It just happened to be A. It was not the most common risk factor.
Okay. So in 2024, we're assessing the roadway network, but the goal is 0 serious injuries by 2050. I mean, do you see this getting to the point where we're only going to be, quote, safe if there's no longer humans in behind the wheel of vehicles?
Is the question if all cars were autonomous by the year 2050, we'd be able to reach this goal.
I'm not asking you to defend the program. I'm just trying to understand what Caltrans is driving at. So by 2050, we're going to have 0 incidents. Does that mean that they're no longer, we're all riding in hydrogen trains and autonomous vehicles by then?
That is not the intent of Caltrans's 2050 goal. I think the goal is to recognize that, people sometimes can drive poorly, but you want to acknowledge that people can do that, but to design your roadway network with that in mind, to make it more forgiving and to make it so that when crashes do happen, they could be fender benders, or someone could be lightly cut up instead of severely injured or killed. It's about reducing the severity of those collisions. So, for example, 2 cars crashing into each other at 50 miles an hour is going to have a significantly different outcome than if they were crashing into each other at 30 miles an hour. For example, a T-bone collision where the impact's 90 degrees is going to have a significantly more severe impact than if they were just sideswiping each other at the same speed. So those would be things that we look at to really reduce the severity of crashes that do occur from an engineering perspective.
Okay. So I guess just to pull back, we're sticking to looking at ways to modify our roadways to make them safer.
I think that is a big part of it. There's also, there's obviously also strategies around education. There's strategies around vehicle technology as they continue to evolve. But yes, addressing roadway design is a big piece of it.
All right. Thank you, Terrence. I don't have any more questions. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you.
Terrence, this is Paul Yanas, Mayor, City of Los Banos. Just 2 quick questions. One, when you guys collect data that's used for this, are multi-jurisdictions within the same city or county used? And I'll give you an example. In the City of Los Banos, police officers handle all crashes, injury or not. However, the Highway Patrol does take separate crashes on both state highways, and those are not cross-reported. So do you guys look at that when you're collecting data?
So our data comes from SWITRS, which is the statewide database that Caltrans maintains, or not Caltrans, excuse me, the California Highway Patrol maintains. And that database is populated with both local jurisdictions data as well as Caltrans, CHP's data.
Okay, and I'm referencing the City of Dos Palos. If the City of Dos Palos, their law enforcement takes an injury crash, they will not report it to the CHP. They would handle it in-house unless it was turned over to CHP. So do you guys, I guess, contact the other jurisdiction as well just to make sure you have the accurate data?
We've generally been, or we have assessed the CHP data, the SWITRS data that we use for this this report, and the data source has been proven to be authoritative and complete for a number of years now. It is the sort of source of choice when it comes to crash data analysis.
Okay, and then second question, do you guys look at intersections that, I'm going to sound like a nerd with crash terms here, only because I've investigated a few. Primary collision factors. So, for instance, somebody makes an unsafe turn, crashes into a car, but do you look at the intersection as a whole? So, for example, 30 to 40% higher crash rating in intersections near high schools because of the age of the drivers. Is those like associated things looked into?
So yes, we do look at primary collision factors, and in the report you'll find that each jurisdiction's primary collision factors, like percentages, etc., are all listed out. So feel free to check that out. But in building our profiles, we do start to then zoom out and look at other factors. But like you said, for example, is it happening at an intersection versus not at an intersection? Is it happening near schools or not near schools? And the 7 profiles we found were sort of you want to think of it as being the sort of the most critical or most explanatory set of circumstances we've found. I don't know if that helps. I think with respect to schools in particular, we found was that because of the context of these jurisdictions, it often was the case that, you know, where schools were also, you know, where most of the population was, especially for smaller cities like Estín, Dos Palos. It's really difficult to separate out the confounding factors between the school versus the, you know, the surrounding uses, with the schools being located often near activity centers like downtowns.
Okay. All right.
So didn't identify the schools as, you know, being a particular profile.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Any other questions? No. Seeing none. All right. All right. Thank you for that. And this is just a discussion item, I understand. All right. Okay, move on to item 9, action items. We have none.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Uh-oh. Did you catch my last line? Make sure it's under oath. Okay. Move on to item 10. This is for Transit Joint Power Authority. Item 10, discussion items. 10A, Transit Joint Power Authority from Merced County monthly update. Go to Serenity.
Good afternoon, directors. Thank you. Just a quick update. We've had a lot of projects in the works for a little bit, some of which being some bus purchases and builds, and they're finally coming to completion very soon. We're excited about this. We have 12 what you'll hear referred to as Turtle Top, which is the aftermarket manufacturer for paratransit buses that will be wrapping up. They just came off the assembly line actually this week and having the kind of last minute details, fare boxes, infotainment screens put in them, and we'll be taking receipt of those buses by the end of the month. So very excited about that. We also have our second battery electric purchase that's been in the works for quite a while. We've gone through a couple changes in manufacturer, and we are now going to be receiving these buses in end of September, beginning of October from Gillig. There'll be 3 40-footers and 1 35-footer. We will be doing a tour of the Gillig facility probably on or around September 12th, and if anybody is interested in joining that, please keep an eye out for an invitation. It is a great tour of the manufacturer to see, where the magic happens, shall we say. We also have just completed the installations of our brand new fast fare boxes, happened over this past weekend. Next week we have some training for our technicians to make sure that they're up to date on how to work on those before they go into service, and we start using them when we start collecting fares in October. So those will definitely help with efficiency of service, as they have the tap card NFC feature, as well as improved data collections. So we're very excited about that. Lastly, we have still been working on our electrification of infrastructure at the facility. We are working with our contractor, and they'll be doing a site visit shortly, and we hope to see some more bigger movement on that as well. May ridership is attached. We continue to see increase year over year as we work towards our pre-COVID and even beyond is what we all want to see. So any questions, comments, concerns? Happy to take them.
All right. First, any public comment? No. Comment from directors? Questions? No. All right. Thank you for that. Move on to 10B, microtransit update.
Okay, so this is just a little bit of a deeper dive. As many of you know, we started a microtransit pilot in May of 2021 on the west side of the county, Los Banos, Dos Palos, Estín, Centinela areas. We were with the initial provider for approximately a year, saw the benefits and the needs of the community, saw how this would solve some of the issues we had with the previous deviated fixed routes out on the west side. But we continued to have some operational challenges with our initial software provider. So we made a switch of software providers in December of 2023. I will say it was the smoothest software update change that I have ever been involved in my career, which was very, very nice to see. And we've seen some great efficiencies since then. So we do have Dorothy Mitchell with Via Transportation, who is our new provider online. She's going to run through some statistics from then to now, shall we say.
Be with you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Check.
Yes. Yep.
Was that a thumb? Sorry, I can't hear anyone, so I can't tell if you said yes.
Can you hear us?
Good to go.
Good. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Serenity, would it be best for me to share my screen and just walk through a couple of slides to summarize where we're at?
Whatever your preference.
Yes.
Happy to. Let me do that. All right, wonderful. Thanks for your time, very much appreciated. I will keep this brief. My name is Dorothy. I work for Via Transportation. I'm a partner success principal based in Oregon, and have had the pleasure of working with the microbus team. Just a very quick overview. Via is an international company. We're a transportation software company, and we have quite a presence in California, working with agencies large and small, and corporate partners as well. We provide software that does everything from the planning, initial planning of transit, to a lot of operational pieces as well for different types of transportation. We really focus on microtransit and paratransit as a specialty. And our software does a couple of things. It provides an application that riders can have on their phone to book rides if they choose. In this case, they can also call into a call center to book those rides. We have a tablet or phone-based application for drivers that tells them where to go and who to pick up and when. And we have a desktop-based software that links into both of those other tools, and that allows dispatchers, schedulers, other people to consolidate all of the disparate trips that riders are requesting, starting from all different points around the region, and bringing those together in an efficient way, and scheduling them in a way that utilizes the drivers and the vehicles that our partners have, and so provides them a lot of visibility. And in addition, we have a suite of transit planning tools called Remix that can be used in conjunction with any of these programs. And we're all about streamlining operations, making the most use of resources that folks have, while delivering a high quality and efficient service. So to the program that we collaborate on with MCAG. The microbus, as Serenity said, serves the western side of the county, Los Banos, Dos Palos, Gustine, Santanella, and it provides about 2/3 trips to the general public. Those are, we call it microtransit. Those are people saying, I'm here, I want to go here. They're getting picked up and dropped off exactly where they want to go within the region we've defined. And then about 35% are people that are using the complementary 88 paratransit side of that program. And the great thing is here that with the drivers and the vehicles that TransDev is using to operate the program, those types of rides and those passengers can be put together on the same vehicle and picked up and dropped off on the way to another pickup and drop off to make things really efficient for the service. Just at a very high level, I'm looking back at the data that Via has collected since we've been on board since December of last year. Over 26,000 passenger trips were served. 43% of those rides were ones in which people overlapped on the vehicle. So we like to see as much sharing as possible to make the most use of the vehicle resources that are on the ground. We definitely care about on-time performance, especially in the paratransit world. You want to deliver a ride or at the time that you told someone you would pick them up and drop them off. We're seeing around 89% on-time performance, which is very standard for Via's partners and is slightly higher than what was being seen prior to the software changeover. And then most exciting of all, we've seen a 41% increase in efficiency in terms of passengers per vehicle revenue hour, a term that's known as productivity. So the number of trips that can be delivered with a driver hour resource. I'll get into that slightly more here. So this is showing you a couple of things. One is that there's been a growth in trips delivered since December, really seeing kind of a boost in trips in the last couple of months. And in that time, not only are we delivering more trips, but you're doing it with the same or fewer resources than were being used before. And by resources, I mean drivers and vehicles. For example, in November of last year, prior to when VIA came on board, we had about 2.4 passengers per vehicle revenue hour. Currently, in July and last month, we were seeing 3.4. So what that means, practically speaking, is there were about 500 more rides that happened in the month of July than in November, but with about 250 fewer vehicle hours to deliver those rides. So we're really excited to see that kind of efficiency grow and help to support the most efficient and effective service possible for the area. You all are welcome to download the Microbus app and check it out for yourselves. We see very high app usage and are glad to see that we get a high star rating for that for people that are using it. Over 86% of people taking those public microtransit trips use the app to book, and almost 30% of people taking paratransit trips do as well, which kind of in the space I'm in is extremely high. Usually we see a much lower usage of apps for 88 paratransit customers. And so that leads to about 75% overall app usage, which just saves a little bit of time for the call center and people that are taking those calls and booking rides. And so we're really happy to see that. And then if you're curious about where are people going in this service, this provided a few top destinations. Essential kind of groceries and needs like Walmart and Target are very popular, as well as medical needs, including medical offices and hospitals. I am happy to take any questions, and thanks for letting me share some more with you today.
All right, thank you for that. Questions from the public? No? Directors? No? No questions? All right, thank you so much.
Easy, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to item 11, action items. 11A, approve adjustment of service fees of processing organic material at the Highway 59 Billy Wright landfills. For this, we'll go to James.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. This first item, before I get into it too much, I wanted to say we've just recently completed our first year of the contract with Agramin, processing the organic material out at the Highway 59 landfill. And it was actually a pretty successful year from our standpoint. They processed a little bit over 37,000 tons of green waste out at the site last year. That worked out to about 60 loads a day between private sector and public sector vehicles coming into the site. Looking a little bit past the end of that year, last month in July, we had almost 3,000 tons delivered to the site. That was almost 1,500 loads total. The interesting fact is that 1,173 of those were what we call self-haul. The mom and pops, the local landscapers, the tip trailers. You know, we're only seeing about 300 loads from the jurisdictions, the residential trucks and the roll-offs. So we're getting a good feel now for the numbers of just who's bringing this material to the site. Agramin is still in the middle. I think sometime maybe in September or October, they'll have a CEQA item before the Board of Supervisors that will allow them to then move on with their permits to expand their capacity to 75,000 tons per year. That will include the construction of their covered aerated static pile building, which we hope will be in operation late next summer. So with that, part of the contract that we have with them, there is a clause in the contract that allows them to request an annual cost of living CPI increase. We've been negotiating with them back and forth a little bit. We're a little bit late in bringing this to you. Normally we should have this to you early in the spring so that it's effective July 1st. With the discussions with them, it took a little while longer. What we're proposing right now is that this increase, the contract also specifies that this increase must be brought to you as this board for approval. Some of our other contracts, as you understand, staff has the authority to authorize the CPI increases. So this item does have to be brought to you. We're asking that the rate be increased effective September 1st. And we've got a couple of slides here. The contract is very specific as to the formula that's used to determine this increase. It's based on the San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward area CPIU. The next slide will show what that actually came out to. They look at the December year-end 12-month rate, which was last year 2.6%. So we take that 2.6%, apply it to the existing rates of 53.89 and 66.28 to come up with a yard trimmings cost now of 55.29 and a commingled residential rate. That's the green cans that have the green waste and the food waste in it. That will go to $68 a ton. And with that, I will take any questions.
Questions from the public? No? Director Silver.
Yeah, just on the previous slide there, I guess it always is troubling to me because we use the San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward CPIU, which stands for urban, and nowhere in Merced County, not even the city of Merced, do I consider urban. And so, you know, it's frustrating because you're passing this increase on based upon what they're doing in San Francisco, Oakland, and Hayward. That's a long ways away from us, and I know that's nothing you're going to be able to change, James, but it still frustrates me. I just wish somebody would come up with like a suburban or Central Valley CPI rate, because we just continuously get punished and hammered from every which way that our ratepayers are going to pay more based upon what's going on over there. So I guess it's more of a comment than it is a question. Thank you.
I understand, and we kind of had the same question internally. That's what was put into the contract. You know, these rate areas are set up by the Department of Labor, so I kind of suspect there's not a Central Valley CPI, but I've got enough to do.
All right. Other questions, comments? Director Smith?
Thank you, James. Can you maybe explain why we're charging a different rate for yard trimmings and commingled residential organics, given maybe there's been an update, but last I heard it was going to the same place and being processed the same way. Is that not true anymore?
Not actually, yeah.
Okay.
Several months after Aggerman started up, they did start, and it's really based upon the jurisdiction's actions of outreach and education to their customers, that the food waste is being placed into the green cans. The green waste that comes in, particularly from the self-haul, goes directly into a pile, directly into the grinder, directly into the compost piles. The material that comes in through the residential trucks and the roll-offs has those plastic bags of food waste in it. Right now that has to be hand separated out. So they have a crew of 5 laborers that are raking and shoveling and pulling that material out. It's being placed into another roll-off and then transported to Elk Grove for processing. Under their current permit at the Highway 59, they're not allowed to put that material into the compost piles. Next summer, when we have the CASP facility in place, all of that material will go into the same, but it still requires additional processing with the food waste. No matter what we do, there's contamination, there's packaging, there's other things that the contractor has to remove before it gets into the compost process.
Okay.
We did meet with them this week, and that was one of my concerns, that when we got the CASP up and running, whether they would be looking to, quote, blend these rates and have one rate. I wanted to make sure we maintained a less expensive rate for the self-haul material, that green waste that's the easiest material to process. And we did confirm that, yes, we're going to maintain that lower rate for that material.
So basically the jurisdictions get the commingled rate and the self-haulers get the yard trimming rate. That's the difference. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? No? All right. Do we have a motion?
I will move.
Motion by Director Smith. Do we have a second? Second by Pedroza. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? We have one. All right. Thank you. Let's move on to item B, adopt the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget amendment number 4.
Thank you again. Yes, this item is reallocating some unexpended funds from projects that we've finished over the last couple of years. Just a real quick outline. You know, typically each year we have our annual budget approved. As the year goes on, we may make changes based on revenue or project changes during the course of the year. This is actually the 4th amendment to our 23-24 budget. If we go to the next slide, We've got a number of projects that we've closed out over the last year or are about to close out. We had a total of about $1.6 million unexpended in those projects. And what we're doing with this motion is to move that money over to other ongoing projects that require additional revenue. So we had about 8 or 9 projects that we're closing out, and 3 really that the first one, the Highway 59 landfill gas to energy project, that's an old holdover from the UC Merced project. We had a cost overrun of $371 versus what was in the budget. So we're just moving a little money over so we can close that project out, get it off the books. The other 3 projects that we're increasing are the Highway 59 East Buffer GCCS expansion purchase. That's really our Probe 45 mitigation project. Billy Wright Leachate Pond, and then the fire rover system for Highway 59. That's an early fire detection and suppression system that we will be putting into our new recycling building, which is under construction right now. Next item, or next part of the item, is an amendment to our CIP budget. At the interim closeout of our fiscal year 23-24 budget, there was additional revenue in the amount of $5,200,000. We are reallocating that across 6 projects. The Billy Wright Leachate Pond, the cell expansion Billy Wright, both of those projects will be out to bid early next year. The one note I will make here is earlier in the year we had an item about the avian flu material that we took in at Highway 59. The comment we made at the time was that was kind of surprise revenue that we hadn't budgeted for, and we are allocating that to the future cell construction at Highway 59. And with that, I'll take any other questions.
All right. Questions from the public? No? Director Savera.
Yep. So really quickly, if you go back to your increased projects, not off the ones that are being increased based upon the decreased or the money we didn't spend. On the second one, page 183 in our packet, the increase of $707,055 to the project on the Highway 50 East Buffer gas collection. Is there any reason that one doesn't have a project number? All the other ones that I saw had a specific project number associated with it, but in the packet it doesn't. And I'm guessing that was just maybe a little bit of an oversight.
Yes, that.
In the board packet.
Right, yeah, in the decreased project list.
It's in the increased project list.
Project number 820.
So it's
the Highway 59 East Buffer gas collection expansion. It's the increase of 707,000. Is that what you're talking about?
Okay, yeah. That is.
Can you go to the previous slide?
One more.
Right.
It's
right there. 820.
Okay, so okay, fair enough.
Just not in
I
the
just
staff
it caught me earlier on that one. And then my second question is so I guess James, I realize that it seems to me that a lot of these projects that we're taking this additional revenue that we found, we're taking it and we're putting it into projects that we're going to need to spend the money on. If we move it in, put the money in, we're doing it a little bit sooner. But I guess the one that I have concern over is on the. Hold on, I got all these papers written here. The administrative building. So my question is we're going to add $1 million to it. When we budgeted that project, I mean, did we not know that we were going to need another $1 million? Because I don't recall that as being part of when we budgeted for that administrative building. I'm guessing we had that engineered. We had some cost estimates on that. So kind of help me through that, because we're putting an additional $1 million into it. That's a lot of money. So
the original budget estimate for that project was about $6 million 12 years ago. We've gone through the iterations. We are within a few months of having the final plans and specs, along with a good engineer's estimate, not just based on square footage. As we're going through those final plans, we're finding things that over the period of time that project's been in existence, code has changed. We're dealing right now with the potential of having to put in an actual water treatment system for the facility. Not quite sure yet how that's going to affect us, along with some additional fire supply items we may have to deal with. So to be honest, we're trying to buffer that. We will come back when we have those final plans and engineer's estimate. And my hope is that we don't need any other money. But until I have the number, I can't really.
And I guess so. Where it goes for me is in the long term is we have these bonds and we get this additional revenue, and I can understand the part of putting it into projects that whether it's going to be in this fiscal or next fiscal year or it crosses over fiscal years, we're going to be doing those on cell expansions and those things. But additional money is like I'd like to see that money go into paying off those bonds so that we can get to the point where do we get penalized if we pay bonds off early?
Yes, we're not able to do that.
Yeah, but it'd be helpful if you came up and so everybody could hear you.
So we had this question come up a couple years ago about paying off the bonds early because we had some excess revenue. I would say about 2 or 3 years ago, when they issue bonds, the bond holders have like a set amount that they know they're going to receive, and for the duration of that time. So if we pay off early, they won't receive the interest on that funds for the full amount. So it's basically it's set where they know their investment is going to make X amount of dollars for this duration. So we can't pick the bonds off.
So theory, you could pay them off early, but you just need to figure out what the total amount is. You don't get a discount on interest for paying it off early. Right. So fair enough. It just when I guess it gets we're forking out all this money and now you get an idea in your mind that this project is going to cost X, and then it's like, but then we got to keep adding money to it. That's troubling for me. And then this is just a second question. I'm glad you're up here, Nav. So we got if we take action here, we're going to have $6.75 million set aside for the administrative office. Where do we keep that? Are we in LAIF with that?
So that funding is sitting at the county pool.
Okay.
So we get investment on it. But to your point, Director Silvera, the original amount when we set money into that account, we've been putting money into that 8,000 or that project every year because we didn't know what the cost was going to be, right? As James mentioned, we're getting closer to the final design of the building, and we kind of have an estimate what's going to cost. So that's why we put that $1 million. But even then, that's just an estimate. We're just putting it because we just want to make sure that we don't come to the board and say, all right, we need $10 million for this project when we got $0 allocated. So we kind of start planning ahead to start putting money aside for these projects because we know it's going to be costly. Just like this future cell expansion at Billy Wright, 3 years ago, it was like $4 or $5 million. We're looking at anywhere close to $8 to $9 million to do a cell expansion at Billy Wright. So we kind of look forward to start putting money aside for these projects.
So I just want to add to that. I think what we can do moving forward to be more transparent, because Nav mentioned what I was going to say, is that sometimes these capital projects that you see are basically the accounts that we're building we put money into it until we get to the amount we need. So adding a column into our CIP that has our best estimated project cost so that the board will see that as we add money, you see what the total is. So it's a little easier to determine when the estimate has increased versus when we're just chipping away at saving the money to the project. So we can add that column into our CIP to show, and we'll maybe even date it to say this is the estimate as of, so that you can have an idea of, because I'm always worried about that too, is like if we come every year and add money, even though we know we're building the balance to a certain number, it's hard to discern those from when a project cost actually increases and this is a true project increase. So we can make that for transparency purposes in our documents moving forward. I think it might help.
No, I think that would be helpful, but it's also like when we go out when we think about we're going to do an administrative building, 12 years, I wasn't here 12 years ago, but I would have loved to have been able to, if I was here 12 years ago and you would have told me, hey, it's going to cost you $3 million to build this thing at those prices that day, you make the determination that you're going to go forward. You find the money somewhere and you do it, right? Versus by waiting, it costs us more. The longer we take, it costs us more. Every couple years, the state changes, fire suppression rules in buildings, the building code changes, and all those things always cost additional money. And I guess it is kind of, it's like we rely on this increased revenue to get this stuff done, I guess is where we're at with it, right?
Yes.
This unfounded revenue, the unexpected, we had the avian flu, so there's additional revenue.
Well, and that is the reason why we had a bond as well, right? There was a lot of capital projects out there that we couldn't afford, so they had a bond, right? So this kind of helps us with our financial situation. But one of the things that James and I were talking about is later in the year, we're probably going to bring an item to the board to talk about what ongoing projects that has to happen at the landfills that needs to be ongoing, just like like the future, like the future cell expansions, gas collections for those. Once we're done disposing trash into those, we have to add gas wells on there, right? That costs money, and that's mandated by the state. It's not something that we want to do. It's something that we're mandated by the state. So we kind of want to start, I know there's been a change in the board over the last 12 years, so I think it's a refresher. Just talk about, what are we required to do each year if a cell closes, or what are we mandated by the state to do to continue the operation of and then not even that, but once we're closed, we have to put money aside for the closure funds too.
Yeah.
So.
And then the last question, that money I know right now I sit on the Treasury Oversight Committee, we're gaining interest on that money a lot more than we were when I first got elected. It was next to nothing. Where does that money go? Does that money become unrestricted, or does that money go back into the general fund?
With the interest?
Yeah.
It goes to the CIP project. So when we do the budget, we add an item in there that says estimated interest, and then that goes to the pot of pool. So like if we accumulate $1 million, then next year we'll have we'll take that $1 million and allocate to a new project or the existing projects.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Oh.
Director Pereira, go to you.
Okay. Thank you. The item that Supervisor Silvera brought up, the purchase, what are we purchasing?
We're not actually purchasing it. At one time, that was the thought that you would buy some land to the east of the landfill to mitigate the probe migration over there at Probe 45. That evolved into a potential lease of the property. Cal Recycle kind of frowned on that. They don't allow a landfill to expand its boundary by leasing property. You have to buy it. We just finished a few months ago. We did some additional drilling out there on the east side of the landfill. I'm trying to find the right adjectives. The geology on that side of the landfill is extremely variable. We have a gravelly layer that gas is moving through out to the probe, which right now is about 100 feet from our boundary. We just had a meeting Monday with our consultant talking about some other ideas. Most of the wells that have been drilled to try to capture that gas have only been about 80 to 100 feet deep. What they think now, after some additional geology work, is that perhaps there's a lens about 140 feet below. So we're going to drill some additional wells. They're working on that design right now, and that's where that additional money is being budgeted for those additional wells. The idea is to finish that project off without having to change anything else on that side of the landfill.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. That was Darren.
All right. See any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Chair Silvera, motion to approve.
Motion by Silvera, second by Pedroza. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Move on to 11C.
One last item.
Yes.
I got to kind of blame this on Director Nagy. I think last month he told me, well, I didn't say anything. Well, I'm hitting you hard this month, and to be honest, we're so busy, you're probably going to see me up here 3 or 4 times the next 3 or 4 months. We've got a lot going on. It's really exciting. As I mentioned, the Phase 1 infrastructure project, our vehicle maintenance shop, our indoor recycling center, our new fuel storage and dispensing area, and our upgraded household hazardous waste area. The contractor is back on site this week. They're moving dirt. They're digging out foundations. We should be putting in rock and concrete in the next few weeks. The components of the vehicle maintenance building were delivered 2 weeks ago. The recycling building components are going to start showing up next week. So the face of that landfill is going to change really fast over the next few months, and I invite any of you to come out anytime you like, and we can show you what's going on. This last item I have is a new contract for that household hazardous waste collection. Our current contract with Clean Harbors was a 3-year contract with 2 one-year renewal options. As we got into the 4th year of the contract, the prices to dispose of that material have gone up, and we ran into the contract limit, which was $100,000 per year. Rather than extending the contract for that 5th year, we went back out to bid for new bids. That's what this item is here for, is to award a new contract to Clean Harbors for, again, an initial 3-year period at $150,000 a year with 3 one-year extension options at $200,000 per year. That brings the total for the 6 years, if authorized, to $1,050,000. And again, a lot of these items are out of our control. Disposing of some of the material that we collect, the price goes up, fuel goes up, the contractor passes those costs on to us. So we're just trying to make sure we have enough in the budget and in the contract to handle those items as they come in.
Questions from the public? No. Questions from directors? Comments? No? Do we have a motion? Boyd. Okay. Director Pereira. Second by Smith. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? No? All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, on item 12, discussion items. There is none. 13, go to executive director report.
Let me get started. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a few things. One is a reminder that my report will be twice as long because we don't have a September meeting. Just a note that Directors McDaniel and Nagy will be participating in Valley Voice with our colleagues from the Valley MPOs in September, along with Nav and Elizabeth. See their smiles? Okay. So Director McDaniel is the chair of the San Joaquin Valley Regional Policy Council, so he will be representing us well, as will Director Nagy. I want to say thank you to those of you and your teams who participated in the Measure V bonding workshop that we had with KNN. We did have some conversation about that yesterday with the TRB. I think there were several jurisdictions who were really intrigued by the idea of using your local measure allocation to be able to right size a bond to deliver your priorities sooner rather than later, while also then being able to continue to get annual local revenue while paying your debt service. So you didn't have to completely give up your ability to deliver local projects. So we will continue to work with those jurisdictions that are interested in how that might look. This week was a big week for our transit department. We wrapped up our FTA triennial review of essentially making sure we are spending every federal dollar that we get efficiently. And that process was a 2-day, they say it's not an audit, but it's an audit, a 2-day audit. We're wrapping up a couple of things to get to our reviewer today, and then you'll be seeing a report of those findings. But overall, the few things that they've showcased, given us a highlight of are really minor. It's nothing about how we're spending money or transparency. It's just, details here and there, and a lot of which we'll be able to clean up before it ever even gets in a report. So just a early kudos to the transit team and our procurement team and our PIO team and our planning team, everyone. It was a whole effort. So you'll be hearing more about that. And then lastly, I'll just mention that the City County Dinner is October 24th, and MCAG is the host. We'll be at the Elks Lodge on October 24th, so the save the dates and the invites and all that stuff will be going out. But that essentially means it's immediately after this meeting. So we'll be able to adjourn here and then go down over to the Elks Lodge. And that's my report.
All right. Item 14, director's report. Start on the end over here.
Nothing to report.
Something to report. Just, I guess maybe a question for Stacy. I was up in North Valley a couple days ago, and I saw a veterans van, like a veterans transport van for the VA for the medical. And I was wondering, is there a way that we could use our transportation dollars for something like that? You know, because they could call right now and order a ride, right? And so is there a way to just kind of tailor maybe one van or to that so that it's made aware and they know?
Let me talk to Serenity. I know there are rules about offering public transit that then is limited to only certain populations. But with our Measure V program already offering the free fares, there may, I think, a more appropriate or maybe a wider avenue for us to explore would be to use Measure V to offer some sort of specialized transport. Let me look into that. It's an interesting question.
Because I know our veterans medical transportation is limited and not serving the need, so just thought.
And it also, another question that I'm going to say out loud so that I don't forget, and I'm looking at Serenity, is it may also, maybe we need to look at what if we were able to support the existing veteran services for them to be able to expand the services they provide through funding sources we get so that there aren't two services operating to the same population. So we'll look into that. That's really interesting to explore.
You're up. All right. Going down the list here. No. All right, same here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick 5-minute recess to let staff that's on site or attendees leave, and then we'll go into item 15, which is closed session.
going to scoot back here so I can.
All right, we're back from closed session. No, nothing to report, and so we'll adjourn the meeting at 4:40. I'm going to call it 48.